Good afternoon, everyone. I have one of the teacher's mics for, which is strangely intimidating. I usually have the mic marked other, which is nice. I like that. This is Rinson's mic, so I feel like the standards are high here. So Roshi did ask me to talk about all things Shuso. And I think we've all been around enough to know what Shuso is. Probably on Sunday, you've heard it mentioned. So as you know, this Sunday, excuse me, this Sunday is Reverend Kaisha's Shuso Hosen ceremony, which is really high ceremony. It's like one of the most formal ceremonies we ever do here. So if you can come to that, I would greatly encourage it. And Shuso has a long history. There's records of the Shuso role in Chinese texts dating back over 900 years. So from 12th century China to 21st century Toledo, karma is very mysterious, for sure. And traditionally, a long-time student is assigned the role for a limited period of time. So in our case, it's for the period of one ango. There are certain other sanghas where it might be for a year. It varies, but it's a very defined period of time. And during that period, they are the model of practice and a source of encouragement for all the students. So again, asking a lot there. Shuso translates as chief disciple or head seat. And really, it's not really a position, it's a process. For instance, I went through this process in the fall of 2019. Reverend Kaisha is going through it now. More Shusos will go through this same process. And what it really is, in many ways, is a mark of the maturity of the Sangha. That a student can be brought to this depth in their training, and the teachers foster that training to the extent where a student can be empowered to give a Dharma talk from the high seat is a pretty high bar for a community. And the fact that our Shusos are homegrown, we've actually done all of our training here, is really a testament to the Sangha, to the community that we have here. So how do we get a Shuso? How does a Shuso manifest? So in most of our other empowerment and initiations, they're done as a cohort. Chukai, Shokin, there's always a group of students going through this process together. Shokin is not like that. It's an individual experience. In some ways, it's an individual experience. And there are very specific criteria for a Shuso. They have to be a Shokin student. They have to be at a certain point in the koan practice. And they have to, and really critically important, they have to have a deep relationship with the teachers and with the community. That's a really vital aspect of it. Because while Shuso is an individual experience, it's actually for the entire community. As I said, it's a marker of growth of a community. And I don't know if you've read any of the interviews on the website relating to Shuso. Doan there, I think, says that it is an expression of Bodhi mind, and of course, the mind of awakening for the sake of all beings. So intrinsically, of course, it's for everyone. It's never for the student. As always, we always give our practice away. So the initiative to become a Shokin student comes entirely from the teachers. A student doesn't ask to be Shuso. That would indicate that perhaps they're not ready for that role if they actually ask to do it. And really, it's training here is very organic. But obviously, the student-teacher relationship has been deepening and maturing over a number of years. In fact, over a decade in the case of myself and Kaishan. When it happens, it's both a surprise. It's like, You kind of think, really? and it's also not a surprise, because it's in the depth of that relationship with the teachers, you can kind of feel, your training really go into your bones. So I think probably everybody is both awed and shocked at the prospect of doing this. And, sometimes you think, oh, this is so great, I'm so happy. And on the other hand, you think, I'm not ready, because you always think you're not ready, right? And one of the beautiful things about Zen training is, of course, the little push over the cliff the teachers give you every now and then, not just for Shuso, but at all stages of practice. And just to be clear, it just happens that the first 2 Shusos here are priests, although I wasn't a priest at the time. But Shuso is open to the entire community. There will come a day where we will have priests who have gone through Shuso on this side, and we will have gray robes, Shoken students who have no intention of ordaining, that's not their path, who are Shusos also. So it brings a real variety of experience in terms of Zen training, in terms of life, to the Sangha. It's also beautiful that, you see, well, anyone can do this. It's really an encouragement for practice. And even if you have, even like for members who really have no intentions of ever becoming Shoken students, the fact that this is someone you have practiced with, someone you have seen like at their best and at their worst, someone who has made many mistakes, many public mistakes, that this person can actually receive this initiation empowerment really speaks to how Zen works in the world. This is not like a credential of authority. This is actually training and practice, which we all do. We all do. And of course, this is all done within the container of the lineage in the teachings. And something Roshi really emphasizes, and he does with ordination also, is the necessity of the Sangha blessing. He's actually called it Sangha transmission, that the Shuso has to be really connected to the Sangha, where the Sangha is actually okay with this. Maybe okay with this, but the Sangha naturally feels that this is an organic integration of this person's practice in the community. Roshi talked about when he received Inca, and just to emphasize, Inca is transmission as a teacher. Shuso is not. It is not a transmission. It's simply an empowerment or initiation. But Roshi said at his transmission, where he became Roshi, that the public aspect of it, there's a lot of private stuff that goes on, but the public-facing aspect of it, where he and James Ford Roshi stood in front of the community and they put down their zagus, their bowing mats, and they each bowed together. And he said, he went down as sensei and he came up as Roshi. So that actually doing that in public with the community is really critically important. I know anyone who was there remembers that moment, right? And the same with the big ceremony we do, Shoso Hosen. It's pretty memorable. It's pretty memorable that like your friend, your Sangha mate is up there doing this. There's something really empowering that this give and take with the community. And really that public aspect of it is part of the magic. It's a critical part of the magic of it. So, and we're all doing this together, which is why we should all acknowledge this together. And of course, this working in community goes all the way back to the Buddhist time, where he emphasized how critical spiritual friendship was. When Ananda said, spiritual friendship is at least a third of the path, the Buddha said, no, it's the entire path. And really, I think this community in particular epitomizes that. So for those of you who've gone through empowerment and initiation processes, Jukai, Shoken, ordination, there's a felt sense to going through that, or even just to witnessing that you kind of feel in your body, and that I certainly cannot express in words. I think probably you know what I'm talking about. And as Shuso, that is not different with Shuso. This is something you feel in your bones. I have the fan that Roshi gave me, and I treasure it, and it's just a fan. And I have the poems that the Sangha wrote me in a box under my altar, no less, both of those things. And it also reminds you that it's serious business. It's serious when Roshi hands you a mark of initiation. And it's serious business and joyful business when people write silly poems or beautiful silly poems. It's both. So Shuso training, what is that like? So you've said yes, of course, I would love to do this. And then you say, and exactly what am I doing? Which is typical Zen too. And there's a lot of, let's see how this unfolds, which is always, makes you a little nervous, right? And there are certain prescriptions and expectations that always go with this role. Before I entered the Shuso, no, actually, Zuisei, when you did that interview with Roshi and Sensei, you asked how it would be different for me, and Sensei said that I would have their glaring eyes upon me. And that is very true. That is a very true part of Shuso training. And you never know when your practice will be found wanting. And you never know when you're going to be called on the spot to present something in public. That's scary enough in the Dokusan room. Being called on in the middle of Sunday service it's just something you trust your training, you trust the teachers, you trust the process. And really it's the fact that we have teachers who care enough to invest this amount of time and effort and spiritual energy in our training to this level is quite remarkable. We are so lucky to have that. So overall, the training is really organic. It feels like a very natural process. And it really comes out of that student-teacher relationship, which we emphasize so much. Going into Shokan, that's really what the Shokan covenant is about, is that student-teacher relationship, that the student has responsibilities towards the teacher, and the teacher has responsibilities towards the student. And that really is the basis out of which Shuso comes. I remember John saying, too, that in talking about training, that there's a lot of possibility. There's a lot of possibility. And that it's led by the heart and by the Dharma eye, but that the heart comes first, which always seems a little less intimidating when you really are just led by your heart and you trust your heart. So I was given a possibility, an opportunity. I was allowed to choose the theme of the Ango, which was the paramitas, the virtues, and I was allowed to integrate poetry into it. I was encouraged to integrate poetry into it, which I loved. And yes, there were moments of correction. There were moments of very public correction. And how do you receive that? How do you receive kind of the trust you're being given and the correction you're being given? Do you receive them differently? It's a really interesting process. And in some communities, honestly, Shuso training can be really harsh. And the reason for that is, the ego can't co-opt anything. No matter how lofty the aim of this thing is, the ego can come in there and just grab hold of it. So in some sanghas, Shusos are corrected a lot, but not with the kind of the goodwill and the twinkle in the eye that we do it, but actually very harshly corrected in public. And we don't do that. We're certainly a heart-led sangha, even in these moments of serious training. So I do remember Roshi goaded me on a number of things that, I didn't really care that much about. But then he discovered the Oryoki bowls, which are the bane of my life. And we were at the old temple at the carpet warehouse, so we were sitting very close together, and I was in the second seat, and he could see I was not tying them up correctly. As the new people discover today that I cannot do that, I still cannot do that, but we're not going to share that with Roshi. Right? I'm not going to tell him that. But he kept on and on about not being able to tie the Oryoki bowls until it did become like sand in the swimsuit. It did become irritating. And I think once he saw that I was actually irritated, he let it go. But I remember like 2 weeks after Shuso Hosen, I got this message from Gokyo, and she said, I asked Roshi how to tie up the Oryoki bowls, and he said I should check with you. And I was like, damn it, he's still doing it. We're lucky that man uses his power for good. That's all I can say. So there are empowerments and initiation at the ceremony. So what difference does that make? Well, the most visible difference is that the Shuso is empowered to give Dharma talks. And there are gradated levels of Dharma talks, and that depends then on what the teachers allow you to do. To be really clear, Shusos are not empowered to talk on wisdom. They're not empowered to give teishos, the shout, the wisdom teachings. So what you'll hear from me and Kaishan is pretty much generally Buddhist Dharma. And there are markers. You get a new raksu, which of course you have the pleasure of sewing yourself. And on this raksu, on the Jukai raksus, it's your Dharma name that you get. On this, it's like words of encouragement from the Shuso, or from the teachers. I can't take this off because I have the mic on, but it's, I think it's okay to share that. I don't think it's secret. So the koan, at Shuso Hosen, you get a koan, which you have no idea what koan you're going to get until you see it. And the one I gave was, I think, case 5 in the Mumonkan, the man up the tree. For those of you who aren't familiar, there's this man up a tree, and he's hanging there by his teeth. And what's not always obvious is his hands are completely free. He could actually save himself, but he's hanging there by his teeth. And then somebody comes along and says, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? Or what is God? What is this life? And you have to respond. You're there hanging by your teeth, because of course it's you hanging by your teeth, and you have to respond. And that was the koan I got. So the verse I got from the teachers was, seeing the luminous moon and mystic tree, you entered the way, riding on a train. I forgot about that. That was some reference to something that happened in an open sozan. Also a very magical time. If you can come to open sozan, please do. A lot of teaching happens during open sozan. Now you are up the mystic tree, hanging from a branch with your teeth. Everywhere is home. Enjoy the ride. So, yeah, it's fun. We'll have to ask Kaishan what his raksu says. So you have the raksu, the fan, and you wear the raksu in place of your other raksu, and then well, not really in place of, in addition to, probably. And you use the fan when appropriate, like if you're giving a talk, the Shuso should have their fan with it. And then there's Dharma combat, which is probably like the sexiest, most outward expression of it. This is what everyone talks about when you hear there's a new Shuso. You've probably all encountered it with the teachers, some of you with me. Have you seen Dharma combat? So it's always at the end of an ongo, and the teacher or the Shuso gives a very short teaching, and then they respond. They throw it out to the Sangha, and then people come up and challenge or engage the teacher on that. And it's totally unscripted. You have no idea what's going to happen. So you can imagine for a newly minted shuso that might be a little intimidating. It's really, apart from encouragement talks, it's the first time you've been on the high seat. So, and this is your experience, totally unscripted, totally organic. And actually, in some sanghas, it is not that. In our sangha, Dharma combat is very much a live process. In many more traditional sanghas, the entire thing is scripted. You know the questions, the responses are written out. It's very ossified. Naturally, we don't do that. So as I said, Kaishin will get an envelope. He will open the envelope, see the koan, and immediately get up and go down to Roshi and hand the koan back. So you don't even have the koan in front of you to, to help you on the way. And then he will give a teaching, and then you will be greatly encouraged to come up. We'll form a line down the center with zafus and zabatans, almost like you were in Dokusan, and you will come up one at a time. Kaishin will be on the high seat here, I'll be down there. There'll be a hashiki, the hashiki will be up here, and you'll be handed the mic, and you can ask him anything pertinent. Actually, some of the stuff I remember from my ceremony was not pertinent to the talk at all, but you know, you've no control over it at all. You never know what's coming at you. So certainly Dharma combat is not the place for scripted moments. You know, don't prepare something, because you won't know what the koan is anyway. But there are places for scripted moments. There are at least 2 paragraphs that the shuso has to memorize, very formal, and this comes way back from the Soto tradition, so hundreds and hundreds of years ago, shusos saying these same words in their sanghas. And in our other empowerment ceremonies, there are scripted moments. In Jukai, there's a script. In Shokan, there's a script. But in Shokan, you stand up and you read a poem you've written. In Jukai, you have been writing in those journals your expression of the precepts. So we do both, but it's all from the heart. And also the form holds this all together. Can you imagine if we did no training in the Sangha and everyone just mulled in here on a Sunday and lounged around, and suddenly we tried to do this Dharma combat? It would be complete chaos. But really, without speaking, people know what to do. They know to gasho, they know how to get in line, they know you don't interrupt. They know the container of all these forms. Again, it speaks to the maturity of the Sangha, that we can actually do something so alive within this really ancient form, which is kind of what we do all the time. So I don't honestly remember a whole lot about my Dharma combat. Unfortunately, it was recorded. I think Zuise, did you record it on an iPhone? My sister watched it. She lives in Ireland, so she wasn't here. And she said, what was up with that? It was like, because Zuise was moving around with it, it was like, oh, I'm getting seasick watching this. So fortunately, there is no real record of it. There is a record of it, but it's not worthy for seeing. I remember a lot of just wonderful, like I am definitely an introvert. I'm definitely shy. I don't like being put on the spot. So you would think Dharma combat would be a complete nightmare for me, and I can honestly say it was like so much fun. It really was so much fun. Because you're just encountering this one person, and then, you know, and Lamatas, that book, Bird by Bird, you just encounter one bird at a time. Just encounter one student at a time. I do remember at the end, Secho was the staff bearer, so he was behind me. Oh, and his presentation of the koan was that he just came flying over my shoulder and fell in a heap, you all know Secho, in the floor. And then I remember Eika dragging him out of the zendo. And you know, by that stage, that just seemed perfectly normal. It was just another Sunday. So yeah, there's a lot of form and there's a lot of not so much form. And I have to say, too, that it's a lot of fun, but you do feel the empowerment and the initiation. I think any of you who have gone through Jikai, through Shogun, or witnessed those ceremonies feel that. Again, something you can't really express in words. And even if you haven't seen those ceremonies, there are places in your life where you've almost felt that moment of empowerment, initiation, maybe in relationship, the birth of a child, or something where it just breaks your heart wide open, but you could never put that in words. So it's certainly not unique to this process. So what happens after Shuso Hosen, apart from Roshi still wreaking his havoc in your life? Well, there's a lot more training. There's a ton of integration. Because this is, as with marriage, that's the easy bit. The wedding ceremony is the easy bit. Then go back and live that marriage. And that's really what the Shuso does. And of course, you have the support of the Sangha. You have the support of the teachers. And is there a shift in relationship with the Sangha? Honestly, there is. But it's just like there's a shift in your relationship with the Sangha when you wear the Raksu. There's a shift in your relationship with the Sangha when you wear the robe. It's, again, not unique to this experience. And of course, there's a lot of responsibility that goes with being Shuso. You're actually allowed to get on the high seat and give a Dharma talk. So, and of course, as I said, it's not transmission. You can do that with the authority of the teachers. So it's a derivative authority that you have. But it's also a great responsibility because you are speaking on behalf of the teachers. So it's a very joyful and a very serious thing. And of course, the whole process is a demonstration that this is possible, that people do this. And as I said in the beginning, it's definitely training, but it is individual. It's an expression of your own spiritual development and of your training, both of those things. So it's, in Zen, we say this a lot about things. It's totally intimate and it's totally impersonal. Both of those things are true. So what comes after Shuso Hosen? Well, I don't know because I'm still alive. It's still happening. A lot of mistakes, for sure, a lot of integration. And as Doan said, a lot of space for opportunity, a lot of space for creativity. And that's really what we do. Well, we talk a lot about training, and that can sound harsh, but it's really training in just being yourself. That's what Zen training is. It's just allowing you to be yourself. So I thought, because I talked about poetry and creativity and training, I should end with a poem. And I thought, where am I going to find a poem that speaks to Shuso Hosen? And this poem just came immediately to mind. And part of me knows why, but the greater part of me has no idea why this poem manifested. So again, that mystical, inexpressible aspect of it. So let's experience it together. This is Starfish by Eleanor Lerman. This is what life does. It lets you walk up to the store to buy breakfast and the paper on a stiff knee. It lets you choose the way you have your eggs and coffee. Then it sits a fisherman down beside you at the counter who says, "Last night, the channel was full of starfish." And you wonder, is this a message, finally, or just another day? Life lets you take the dog for a walk down to the pond where whole generations of biological processes are boiling beneath the mud. Reeds speak to you of the natural world. They whisper, they sing, and herons pass by. Are you old enough to appreciate the moment? Too old? There is movement beneath the water, but it may be nothing. There may be nothing going on. And then life suggests that you remember the years you ran around, the years you developed
a shocking lifestyle, advocated careless abandon, owned a chilly heart. Upon reflection, you are genuinely surprised to find out how quiet you have become. And when life lets you go home to think about all of this, you do for quite a long time. Later, you wake up beside your old love, the one who never had any conditions, the one who waited you out. This is life's way of letting you know that you are lucky. It won't give you smart or brave, so you'll have to settle for lucky, because you were born at a good time, because you were able to listen when people spoke to you, because you stopped when you should have and started again. So life lets you have a sandwich and pie for your late night dessert, pie for the dog as well. And then life sends you back to bed, to dreamland, while outside the starfish drift through the channel with smiles on their starry faces as they head out to deep water, to the far and boundless sea.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them.